Hi, everyone. Welcome to our weekly painting webinar. Yay, we're back after 3 weeks of summer studies, which was awesome because we were able to catch up with some of the paintings. We're super excited. Today is July 9th, 2021. In case you're watching us from the future, the meeting is, the webinar is getting recorded. So let's do this. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back.
Awesome.
I'm super
Yeah.
excited about today. Super duper.
Perfect. Cool. So yeah, we'll just start with format. We'll go through sketching, and then we'll just do sort of like step by step. I don't know how far we'll be able to go, but we'll just provide as much information as possible. And first thing is selecting the image. We put some images on the folder just in case you needed an extra source of inspiration, but it sounds and it looks like everyone has an image of an airplane window. So yeah, first things first, assess your format. So there are two things that we always talk about: the format and the painting surface, or the ground. Format is the size, the shape, and the orientation, three things. So I'm using 12 by 16. It's fairly large for this session, but it just looks better on the camera. 9 by 12 is a good size. It just depends on what you have. The shape is rectangular. Sometimes we do square, very rarely, but that's important. The orientation that I have is portrait or vertical orientation. So that's the basics of the format. The surface or the ground that I'm using is cotton paper. It just depends on what you have. You'll have to work the paint differently. Every painting surface provides a different feel when you actually paint. So if you're using canvas, be careful because it could be a little bit more challenging and difficult. Canvas is always the most, we feel like canvas is the most challenging painting surface. So yeah, and then I was able to select one of the images and then just go to print it out, just because I feel it facilitates the process. But if you're working off of a screen, so just place the screen on a mode that doesn't go off while you're painting, so you have the image on all the time, close to your format or your painting surface. So you have the reference next to you, and also as close as possible, and try to keep it steady. So it just allows for less distractions. And it doesn't matter if it's like an iPhone or a small screen, you can still do this, and it has the ability to, you'll have the ability to actually enlarge and see a close-up. Because we always have a hard time deciding, and that's a very important thing when you actually, before you actually paint. We use a random number generator. And this is the image that I got. I leave it to the universe to select the image for me because it's so hard. But we'll talk a little bit about, while we start painting, we'll talk a little bit about how incredibly important is to choose a subject for your painting. With this past 15 months, we've been talking about it this past week. Our priorities have shifted a little bit. Things that we consider not as majorly important a few months ago, now they are so crucial. For example, composition. It's something that we explained, but we sort of like explained in a way that we felt it was sort of like becoming better at drawing, but now we see it as a fundamental step, more important than color or value. But recently, we have learned that the subject, the selection of the subject, in regards of how other people see your work, it is so important that technique just becomes second. We watched a video that we're going to send this weekend about how to price your work, and it's by a painter and a teacher. I forgot his name, but sometimes I watch some of the videos because he's very good. And he explained his opinion. He explains his opinion about how to price artwork, and one of the things that he emphasizes is the selection of the subject versus how well painted it is. And it seems almost counterintuitive because we feel like a good painting, it's a painting that is done very well and it shows technique and command. Well, no, a good painting starts from the selection of the subject. That's more important than how well, in quotation marks, you paint it. So I just got this image and I thought it was really good. Actually, I was very happy because it's so unusual and it feels really weird. There's a lot of dark elements. And then the window, it's very small. So I think compositionally, this will give me a lot to play with. And there's a little bit of the seat. So I think that's also very interesting. So I am going to use the yardstick. And I feel like my first steps would be to set up the main scaffolding. The scaffolding, we call it scaffolding, but it's sort of like the limits of some of the elements on the painting, the height of the focal points, essentially. So 12 by 16, and I printed on 11 by 17, so it's pretty close. So I'm just going to follow a similar height and shape. But one of the most, two of the most important compositional principles are how many focal points you add and also the compositional movement. It is advised by conservative opinions that you shouldn't exceed more than 3 focal points. This should be relatively easy because we have a frame and we have a landscape. So there's not, it's not a still life or something like a streetscape where there's a lot of stuff going on. But just have that in mind. Compositional movement is related to how much space you leave around the focal points, because the more we talk about composition, the more we realize that sometimes the painting feels like almost off frame. There is either too much negative space, or it feels that it wasn't intentional. Any part of a focal point that is really close to an edge just feels oddly flushed. So there is interruption in the flow. So there are things compositionally that make it much more difficult for a viewer to actually spend time with a painting. So we are totally in favor of being conservative when it comes to visual elements like composition. So look at your sketch right now and see if things are way too close to the edge. There may be something there you may want to reflect in regards to visual flow. If there's excess of negative space in certain areas that make things look like they're floating, or that you didn't really take care of the entire space of the format. Composition is not something that it's taught in any art class because people are focused on color and stuff like that. But a good painting that's composed well will be a much stronger painting than a painting that is very detailed and with high likeness, but it just feels like the arrangement was off. Okay, so I'm just gonna start also with the left side, and then I'm gonna do my first potato shapes. So I wanna leave enough space between the focal point right here and the edge. I want to make sure that it's not too close because I want some flow. And I love the fact that on the other side, the seat is cropped. So I like this idea of, and by the way, some of the images that we selected, we just used the hashtag airplane window on Instagram. And if you take a break and you want to see images, so literally that's what we did. And then we got some more natural, less studio kind of like images. So this feels a little bit more natural. So potato shape here. And then I'm just gonna go with the potato shape on top. So we were looking at a couple of things when we were looking at the paintings by Jeffrey, I forgot his last name. And Jen, if you want, if you can, Jeffrey Morabito. Jeffrey Morabito. I think those are the only airplane windows that he ever did, but it would be interesting to find out what kind of work he's doing right now. And if he,
Sure.
yeah, and then he's on Instagram, Morabito Studio. I think that's the name.
Cool.
So conceptually, I find that there are two main categories. There's some photos of airplane windows that they feel perfectly balanced, very well taken care of. People were just in front of the window, and then they just, everything feels regular. There's no distortion. And then there are other images of windows that were taken from the point of view of a person sitting next to the window. And I think conceptually, there is a distinction. There's something that feels narratively much more interesting when there's a point of view that feels there, it was taken from someone sitting next to a window. And I like this image not only because of the darkness, but also because it has this uneven edge. It's not regular, it's not parallel, and it's not taken like from a point of view in front. So also during the presentation, we mentioned that what's important in this assignment, it's not just an aerial view. What's original and different is the fact that we have a window, we have a hole, we have a cutout. So that is in fact the thing that takes the aerial landscape to the next level, and also conceptually makes it look like we are flying. So if you ask me, the window is an important focal point. So yeah, don't disregard its importance. In fact, I'm not gonna do anything inside. I'm just gonna entertain or spend some time doing the architecture of the window. That's gonna take some time. So I'm doing the structural lines first. I also got inspired by the style of Morabito's paintings, super loose, not very rigid. There's something really freeing. The strokes are arranged as if they were a bouquet of flowers, because they're fragmented. They're very shape-like. There's not much blending. And then there's this force. The strokes feel very physical. So there's something style-wise about his work that also makes it very interesting and not the typical airplane window painting, which if you have some time and you want to browse on YouTube, you're going to have delightful, cheesy how-to videos that will tell you how to paint an airplane window. Not recommended. So yeah, lots of lines. And I think I'm okay. I feel a little bit better now, but the architecture of the window, I think it's super important. I would imagine that seeing this, our first focal point is what we see through the window, you know, the landscape, the view, and that's possibly one of the main criteria in selecting the piece, you know, what colors are there, clouds. I mean, there were some interesting things in the images that we put. But the more that I do this sketch, I realize that the window, it's pretty important. Okay, so I'm just gonna sketch a little bit the tray on the back seat. I think that's okay. All right, I'm gonna clean up the accessory lines. I knew that something like that was gonna happen. So, sorry about this. Just gonna okay, got it. Okay, perfect. Okay, here we go. And whoops. I think, all right, I think I'm ready for what's inside of the window. Yeah, I think I am. So I'm just gonna do, I have a landscape, so I'm gonna do horizon line. There's part of the wing. This should be a little bit lower. So I'm just gonna pencil in that shape. And I think, I don't know what city this must be, but there's a river. So I'm just gonna do the river. And I think that's the ocean back there. That's not super important. There's a lot of texture. So I think, at least in mine, there's texture. And so texture is something that we recommend doing later, towards the end. It's not something that becomes very important at the very beginning stages. So identify what's shape versus what's texture, because I think that will help you put things in order. If you start doing little buildings right now, it's possibly not a very good idea time-wise. So leave anything that feels texturized to a later time. I think that's probably a good idea. Okay, and I can see things that I want to change, but I think I'm okay. And I have some time, maybe I have some time. There's a lot of darkness, so I don't know if I want to do this, but I'll do it mostly because I don't want to use that much charcoal. But I'll do it on the actual window. So anyhow, I'm just going to try to do a little recap about the sketching. So if you notice, I followed a certain certain steps from less specific to more specific. I didn't start with details. I started with potato shapes, silhouettes, just because they allow me to make changes much more easily. Once I have some details, then I feel trapped and it just becomes a burden or much more challenging to change things around. And I know that I'll have to change many things as I continue painting, but from broader and more general to more specific. So I identify 2 focal points and you know, the window or the interior of the plane and the exterior. These are very important elements. And then, yeah, I love the chair. So I think that's very good. And then after the linear elements, it's always a good idea to use the side of the charcoal and study the scale of values from darker to lighter. So I won't do the whole thing, or maybe I will, just in broad strokes. Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. And what's important here is that two things will happen. Fading the linear elements will give you a much more integrated view of everything. So in other words, when you start applying a value, then the lines that contain that value become part of the value, and the whole drawing moves forward more towards like the illusion of space. The second thing is that you have an opportunity to study the light direction. And in this case, the light source comes from the window. And I think that's another reason why I love this image, just because it's very clear that there's a main source of light. Nothing has been sort of like compensated or recalibrated to make sure that there's light outside and there's light inside. So it just feels much more natural, a dark interior and then this light. So as you notice, I'm not very specific or detailed. Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I thought I was gonna use a lot of charcoal, but I think that's good. I'm not gonna shade anything inside because, there's some areas, but I love how pale it is. So another thing that I love about this image is that I have a section that is very high key. And high key is a category that defines colors that have a lot of lighter values, pastel notes. And then I have an area that has a lot of low key values, and low key is defined by darker values. So this is something that I like about the painting, the high key and the low key. And depending on the image that you've taken, some of the, and we put an example with Morabito's work, some of the views are nighttime views. So there's more light inside of the plane and than outside of the plane. So something to also consider, the different key quality of the light outside and the light inside, high key versus low key. So I'm not gonna shade anything right here. And I think I'm just ready for, perfect timing. I'm ready for the next step, the wash. Do a quick checklist, I guess, of things that are important before you move forward, especially compositional movement. Look at the edges, and look at the edges once and twice and a dozen times, and see if there's anything interrupting, squeezing against the edge. Even if it's not touching the edge, sometimes leaving very little space, it feels like the same as touching the edge. We always say that the edges become magnets. So anything that feels really close, it gets pulled against the edge. And yeah, the number of focal points in this composition, it may not be as crucial because it's very clear there are only a few elements, but mostly also negative space versus focal points. So see if the space that feels more like background, or it's not contained, or it's not physical or shaped, if it's interesting compared to the focal points. those things are really, really important. As I said, an image that's composed in a way that creates less friction for the viewer increases the engagement of someone looking at the painting. And it may be something that it's from the subconscious, because a viewer doesn't necessarily need to understand compositional elements at all, but it does affect the engagement of the viewer big time. Something that feels, or it's arranged in a very odd way, could just create some friction, visual friction, and then weakens our painting. All right, so big brush. I'm going to use neutral tones, and I'm just going to use a lot of, I think I'm going to use chromatic black, and then maybe I'll use ecru, and that's it. So what's a wash or staining layer? So the staining layer is the transition between the dry medium and the wet medium. That's one definition. It's the foundational layer, liquid layer that you put on the ground in order to build your following layers. So you need something that primes the surface, that seals the charcoal. From a perception point of view, you want also a layer that has some color, because the blankness of the canvas could affect your decision making in regards of value on color. I was reading the other day that having a blank space on a painting surface is something very new that started with the technical revolutions during Impressionism. But before then, there were no blank canvases. The canvases were not white. And not only that, but when painters had a surface, they just added like a muddy tone first. So there was no such thing as starting a painting with a blank white canvas. So I thought that was interesting and important, and it kind of like validates our suggestion that we should start with a layer that's painted all over and not leaving anything pristine or white. So again, I'm gonna use chromatic white, and I'm gonna use solvent because I want something super liquid. And I'm gonna go darker to lighter. So I think I'm gonna use a ton of black here, but we'll see. So you want something that's watercolor-like. And brush size, I like to use a big brush just because it's a primer. And this layer has a very specific function to create a wet layer. I need to bring paint. Yeah, I'm using chromatic black. And I'm working fast. My brush strokes are very gestural. I'm not filling up shapes right now. I'm not coloring. And I try to identify darker to lighter. So, and I love the fact that this chromatic black, it feels very transparent. Chromatic black, it's not necessarily applied to the name of a color. A chromatic black is any black that is made by two opposite colors. So I think this chromatic black from Gamblin is made by mixing a red and a green. And maybe Jen, if you want, you can tell us the red and the green. If you wanted to also find, I think Gamblin has a diagram showing how the mixture of two opposite tones that are darker creates a black. That's why it's called chromatic. So you can create chromatic blacks using combination, 3 sets of combinations, or three sets. Green and red. And we tried this before with, okay, let me see, green and red, blue and green. No, wait, purple. What? No, forget it. I'm not gonna spend time.
We
Jen, help
did
me out.
green and we did green and red.
I need
And
a,
we did,
I need a color wheel.
yeah, shoot. Everyone's screaming right now. Blue and orange, is that, would that make chromatic
Yes.
black?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then
Yellow and
okay.
purple, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yellow and purple. Yeah. It's
Okay.
like what's left. We got it. Okay. This this chromatic black is chlorinated and bromated. Oh man. Phthalacene and quinacridone red. I'm gonna put this in the
All right.
photos because
Yeah.
my
Wow.
pronunciation of this is obviously right on.
Oh wow! But it's a sorry, it's a red and a green, right?
I don't know. I will also pull those two colors up so we can actually see them.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And then, okay, Jeffrey Morabito.
Yeah.
Okay, so his last show was early 2020, which totally makes sense. Looking at his Instagram, it looks like he's working a lot with like ink right now and just kind of doing a summer sketchbook.
Cool.
Yeah, and he works a lot with, he does a lot of animal paintings, specifically animals in New York City, aka pigeons. But it looks like he's a lover of New York, like we're a lover of LA. And then he goes around and kind of paints what he sees, which I love. And he also has a podcast.
What?
It's called I Know Strange People. And hold on, I'm going to go right back to it. I Know Strange People.
We should approach him.
I know. So the way he describes it is explore the unconventional in the creative process through interviews with artists, filmmakers, and other creative types with host Jeffrey Morabito.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool.
Interesting.
I don't know how many episodes he has, but he only has 12 posts on his Instagram for the podcast. So I assume maybe he has 12 episodes.
Wow.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's like I said, filmmakers, artists.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing
cool.
that.
We should
reach out.
Ruthless, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. I think that would be cool. Let's see what he has to say. Well, thanks, Jan. That was awesome.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I am washing or staining the inside of the window. So when you stain, don't worry too much about containing the shapes. Obviously, it's not coloring. Matching the color is not like a priority. Obviously, it's mostly being aware that the function is to prime the paper and give you a wet, sort of like wet layer that you can build on. It's crucial that we understand that there's a technical function for this, because we may get caught up and what the look of it is, and how, you know, we're losing definition and the colors are not matching, and it could be uh, defeating, could have a defeating feeling. But as long as you are able to understand the expectations of the staining and the function of it, I think it just really releases a lot of that pressure or stress, at least for me. Okay, so I think I'm done with this. Yeah, I am. And maybe there's a little bit of darkness right here. Also, technically, if you see a lot of dripping, dripping is normal, but if you see a lot of dripping, then it means like perhaps it's a little bit too, it's not that it's too liquid, but you're loading up the brush with too much turpentine. So what causes dripping? First of all, dripping is not bad. We're doing a wash, so naturally the consistency of the paint is going to be much thinner, and then things are going to drip. I can see it already. But if things are dripping excessively, it doesn't mean like you need to put more paint. It means that you're loading up the brush with too much liquid. So when you put pressure against the surface, then everything comes out. So you need to gauge how much liquid you're loading up the brush with, and then if that creates a lot of dripping or not. And it's not something that has a very single point. There's a little bit of a spectrum. So you have to test and see how that works. But know that if there's a lot of dripping, it's not bad, but we would recommend to use less liquid in the brush. And yeah, I'm gonna open this window. Okay. All right, so washing is done. And I think like time-wise, because I think it's important to pace yourself and then to time yourself. And it's good that we spend 45 minutes or so, or 40 minutes, 20, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, 40 minutes studying the image, sketching it, shading it, and then doing the wash. So it's ready for our next layer, the first notes. So I'm gonna bring some extra brushes, medium and small brushes. I think I have them all right here. Yeah. All right, got it. I'm not gonna use the big brush. Maybe I will, because I have a lot of background, but we'll see. And I'm gonna take a minute, and so the paper or the ground absorbs the turpentine, and then the wet paint sets a little bit, so I'm able to add paint over. So first notes. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that when we work with staining, we define it as applying color fields. In the sense that there are areas that are not contained, or they don't look like specific shapes. So yeah, just have that in mind, because we don't want to trace anything, and we don't want to start doing line work yet. Moving on to first notes. First notes are, we define them as color blocks. So first notes, we used to say that, you know, painting occurs when we are doing second notes. But over the course of these past months, we realized that the first notes are extremely important, because they allow us to actually study the color palette. So first notes are not just blocking out and that's it, you know, done. There's an opportunity here to take the raw material on the palette. That's not really the palette, it's the raw material. And then start understanding what kind of like mixtures, or how we can create combinations of colors that may give us results that feel fitted for this particular image. And that's something that happens during first notes, because there's no blending, there's no texture, obviously. So that gives us amplitude of space to study the color palette and create the color palette specific for this painting. And what does it mean? What does this mean? And how does it look like in specifics? So I'm just going to use a medium brush, and I'm going to go darker to lighter. So there's a lot of low keys here. There's a lot of dark areas. So I use a chromatic black, but because of the combination of the two colors, it just feels like almost like purpley. It has a color. And I feel like there's something here that I need to study a little bit more. So I just, we could do this in many ways. I mean, it's a little bit more challenging if you are working off of a screen, but still you can do it by comparing, creating a sample and then comparing it by picking up some of the paint and then putting it against the screen and see if it's something kind of like similar. But my favorite thing to do is to actually get a piece of like cellophane that has transparency, and I can do all the testing right here and see if I need the color to be more brown or cooler, or what kind of cast. Maybe there's a little bit of green. What's really humbling about the painting process that people outside don't understand is that it really challenges our own perception of things, because you may argue that we see something like a leaf outside and we say, okay, it's green, and then we can use green. But this is not, as you know, it's not that simple. There are so many kinds of greens or so many kinds of colors and values. So it always amazes me and humbles me how I may think that I'm getting the color right on the palette. And then when I compare it and I test it, I realize that I was so off. It happens every time. You may get a little bit of experience and knowledge about what kind of colors you could mix in order to get something close. But the truth is that there's not a formula. There's not something that you can memorize and say, okay, this will give me this color. And that's why it's so hard to kind of like explain or teach even. But there are some principles. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the chromatic black. Okay. So that's something that you could do and find a way to kind of like test it. And the first thing, as I said, chromatic black, I'm going to put it right on top and then assess. So it's definitely way too dark. And yeah, I think temperature wise, it's interesting, but I feel like the color of the cabin, it's a little bit more tarnished. So how can I do this? So after I compare it immediately, and I sort of like use immersion, I think that's the word. I use immersion in order to actually be able to extract information. If I just put it on the palette and I look at the color, I won't be able to understand the comparison and make decisions based on it. So immerse your brush stroke on the color to see what it needs, how it needs to be tweaked. So first thing when you mix colors is to play with the value and then play with the temperature, that's second. So knowing that this is lighter, I'm going to use chromatic black and I'm going to mix it with raw umber. And raw umber, it's pretty dark, so I'm going to do another test. Whoa, that's very good. Okay, I think I got it. So chromatic black, so value-wise, this is a great color, a great combination. Chromatic black and raw umber. Because of the tarnish effect, I wonder if I add a little bit of yellow ochre to the mix, not too much because I don't want to lighten this up too much. Boom. I think I love this color. Does it match exactly? The answer to that question is no, it doesn't. But it just creates a very unique color that I, I would not be able to recreate just by using the raw material. The point here is not so much to match the color, but to understand that everything has its own color identity. So I feel it's important to sort of like study and practice and see what kind of combination of raw materials can get you something that feels unique and much more elevated, much more sophisticated, much more, I don't know, much more interesting. So there are two ways of approaching this. We can just find an approximate color to what we see, and that's it. But that's one level. I feel like this is going to the next level. So do I need to test the colors all the time? I don't. Now that I know that this is not just one black and it's not just a combination of a couple of colors, I can continue recreating that mixture on my palette without having to match it every single time on the photograph. And that's me. Some painters, they like to do this every single time. Some painters are super OCD in that sense, which is something that probably I shouldn't say, but because that's a disorder. Anyhow, so I'm just going to put much more paint. So now, because I know that I have a lot of this on the painting, whoops. And I'm going to see if I can work with this. So let me have this. All right. So here we go. Maybe I'll use a medium brush right now because I need to cover a lot. So second notes, again, an opportunity to study the color, the beginning of our color palette, which means that we are processing color. I couldn't be happier. Let me see if I can do it right here. I couldn't be happier with a reflection about this. I don't know how I would define it, but it just feels really good. It's not just black. And I'm going darker to lighter, by the way. Darker to lighter, it's always a good rule. And I'm using whatever thicker medium you're using. We started using, by the way, we kind of like changed a little bit. We started using a combination of stand oil and a little bit of linseed oil. Why? Okay, we've gone through different mediums. First of all, if you have the, is it solvent-free medium from Gamblin, that's perfect. It has the right viscosity. So because we're listening to people saying, you know, you have to stick with more natural stuff and oils, forget about, you know, anything that's more alkalized, like the solvent-free medium has something that's alkalized. It's non-toxic, but so we brought in stand oil, which is much thicker, super gooey oil. It was too thick, so we added a little bit of the linseed oil, and then it just gives us a really nice consistency. It's not something that I don't know. It's not something that it's the truth or the best thing. If you have, again, if you have solvent-free, I think that's possibly a really good way of getting one single liquid. So the consistency, the point right here is that the consistency is not as liquid as before. Even though the layer underneath is dry, I'm able, even with a certain level of force, I'm able, against the paper, I'm able to actually block whatever's under. Let's say you're working on this and then you feel like you're not blocking out. What could be the reason? How could we troubleshoot this? It may be because you may be using solvent. So switch the liquid. Solvent right now, it's only the cleaning agent. So switch the liquid. It may be because you are loading up the brush with too much oil. Sometimes that could be a factor that creates sort of like a blur or something that doesn't overlay. So it's generally something related to the liquids. Too much oil or too much medium, or bringing turpentine, that could cause this layer not being able to really cover what you have underneath. And by covering, I'm not saying like completely blocking out, because my brush is picking up some of the, it's picking up some of the brush strokes underneath. Oh yeah, I think that's very nice. All right, so I'm just gonna continue painting. Lots of chromatic black. I need to bring more chromatic black. I need to buy more chromatic black. Like this, for example, right here. What happened here? So I applied the mixture, but I forgot to pick up some. I forgot to pick up some of the oil or medium. And I apply this and it's very dry. It's very dry and it doesn't allow me to continue diluting it. So this is what happens when you don't put enough oil, enough medium. So it's always, again, it's always a spectrum. So now I have more fluidity. It's not a specific point. It's not like you have to struggle to find that exact point where it's going to give you enough fluidity, but not too much liquid. It's a spectrum. And sometimes you have to test it a few times. A little bit of darker elements right here. With second notes, we have the opportunity to continue drawing. So painting is drawing, which means that the drawing component doesn't stop when we leave the charcoal and we pick up the brush. We have the opportunity to continue developing. This is a little bit lighter, so I'm moving to, and I need to bring some oil. So I need to create a little lighter area right here. I don't need to match it, but and I'm gonna bring much lighter. Okay, that's good. With some oil. Color blocking. Remember, we're not blending right now or containing too much. Just creating shapes with our brush. If you feel like you want to fix something, like this is very dark, so I'm just going to remove liquid here and then apply. See, I was able to kind of like reapply lighter notes. Okay. So, and then I'm just going to continue with the darker on the side, the darker value. I'll continue. So I think that's a negative space, some oil if it feels too dry, and I try to stick with the premise of the stage and not get too caught up with what this looks like. Is it right? Am I making it worse? I don't think like that. I just, this is the color blocking. So I'm just trying to stick with that aspect. So there is the area right here. It's way too dark, but it's way too dark. So again, use the rag or remove it if you need to. And this needs to be a little bit lighter. Things should not drip at this stage. So if things drip with the first notes, you're putting way too much liquid, way too much oil, or way too much medium. Because depending on the ground that you're using, you shouldn't get too many drips. And the key is just not adding as much medium. Yeah. And again, I'm not blending, so this is what's gonna be like. Maybe I can't help it. I'm gonna blend. Okay, I'm just gonna bring an old hairy guy. Jen, when you flew, did you feel like some different emotions when you were taking off and landing and stuff? Did you feel different?
You mean like since COVID?
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
It
Oh my
wasn't the
gosh,
first time.
first time. It was not the first time.
Right.
The first time I flew during COVID. I flew end of August, early September of last year, because my mom was having surgery, and that was that was really scary, actually, because no one knew kind of what to expect. The plane was packed. Obviously, it was before vaccines were available, and it was a night flight, and for whatever reason, the plane was pitch black. I guess they just wanted people to go to sleep or just to like power down. So there was no, like, it was so dark that the flight attendants had to use flashlights
Oh,
to like,
come on. No way.
it was crazy and it felt really uncomfortable. Like I
Oh,
couldn't
no.
see the front of my face. And so already it was scary because, you're packed in here. I was alone and I had, my mask on, which was, uncomfortable to wear for that long. And,
Yeah.
so many things. And on top of it, it was pitch black. So that was scary and uncomfortable and just not great. But this time felt, I don't want to say normal because, we were still in mass. There were still things that, they didn't do or couldn't happen. And I was really lucky in that I was on all of our flights. Everyone was really compliant.
Okay. That's another thing.
I wasn't in a situation, yeah, which makes a big difference. As I know Julie was talking about her flight and how, that was not the case. And which I think would make me so anxious.
Yeah.
And boy, I can't even imagine, Julie. But yeah, we were super lucky in that everyone was really compliant and on their best behavior and all the things. So yeah, it felt relatively normal, I guess. Yeah, but I don't know that I felt emotional. I probably should have.
Okay. No. I'm just saying because I haven't flown yet, but I just imagine the first take off after such a long time. I mean, we're super privileged that we
Yeah,
use
I
planes
know,
so
right?
often,
Yeah, right.
but
I know.
it probably felt, different and special.
I
But
think, yeah, I think the first, like, when we took off from LA to New York, uh, we got there early because, we didn't know what to expect. And I tell you what, it took every minute to get through security and to get through everything. Like, it took longer. It felt like it was Christmas time. That's how long it took to get through everything.
mhm.
And so I think by the time we got on the plane, I was just like, oh, thank God, um, thank goodness that we made it and all of that jazz. Um, but yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah.
My fascinating story.
No, that's interesting. We'll see. I mean, um, I need to go back, but now Spain's really bad, so I don't know what's gonna happen. This.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
friend.
Um. Anyhow, so I'm done with like first notes, and I purposely didn't add too much stuff right here. I know that this is like a small area. Let's kind of like think of a strategy. I think what I want to do, I want to spend the next 25 minutes. I'm going to do 25 minutes um, developing second notes on this area, drawing, developing second notes on the periphery, on the outside, on the plane, on the seat, um, and keeping this with the wash, not even first notes. And the last half hour, I'm gonna use this as my painting format. I'm gonna work on this little tiny piece of my painting and do second notes, first notes and second notes there. So in other words, I'm gonna split my strategy. I'm gonna go on two different lanes. My first lane will be work on second notes on the periphery, and then for 25 minutes, and then the last half hour, I will just work on maybe texture and some detail work right here. So moving on to what second notes are. So we talked color fills, that's the staining, color blocking, it's first notes. And then second notes is when we start the pixelating. So um, we are not really blocking out shapes, but we are just using um, stippling. We will explain that stippling, what it is, sort of like pointillism in a way. So the brushstrokes are shorter, they're smaller. Second notes is when we actually decide which areas we want to work on, and then uh, widen the spectrum of values. So we're not incorporating new colors necessarily. What we're doing is developing the color blocking by adding highs and lows. So same method, darker to lighter, less medium. So we can start building things on top. There is a much more gentle pressure in applying the paint because we don't want to scrub too much. Otherwise, we're just going to be stirring the paint in one single area. So that's the reason why we call this sort of like stippling, kind of like applying one stroke and then lifting it up, or being a little bit less aggressive or gestural. So I think what I'm going to do is deciding that I'm going to concentrate second notes on the actual area of the frame, of the focal point. So this will be my main focus right now. And then I think this looks pretty good, but I will do some second notes if I have time before the 25 minutes. So I'm using a much smaller brush. I'm going to do darker to lighter. I have a zero brush, which is very good. Because what I'll do right now is redraw certain areas. There's a very dark line right there, very dark line that I need to bring. So I'm going to bring that. And I realized that, okay, here we go. It needs to be a little bit closer. So I'm using drawing essentially right now, much closer. So I'm using drawing, and then this is lighter right next to it. So I'm concentrating on smaller areas. Second notes, you can blend. So you can use blending a little bit more. And how do you blend? You can bring a really old brush that has like shorter bristles and much more open, sort of like a blush. And then apply the strokes perpendicularly. So you don't use the side of the bristles, you use the tips of the bristles, the heels, right, Jen? Yeah, heels, right? No, shoes. Wait, what?
Toes.
Toes.
I've
Thanks.
gotten there if you hadn't said shoes.
And then since the paint is not dry, you will be able to kind of like blend it a little bit. I need to bring some of the darker notes closer. So let me bring that brush. Yeah. And so now I got the color. So I'm going to bring some darker notes closer. Okay. And I'm just going to continue applying second notes. Again, less pressure. I like the zero brush just because it makes me feel like I could draw with it. It's super thin, so yeah. And then what else? Let me just do some darker notes on top. I love painting really low-key areas. This reminds me of during the summer studies, I reworked the couch painting that I did for the series On the Couch. And I chose that image because the light, it's sort of like dark indoors, and then there's the light coming from the window. And so, yeah. I flicker my eyes back and forth. But if you notice the motion of my brushstroke, I am stippling, sort of like tapping almost, not tapping, but, and if you notice, I haven't picked up much oil or medium at all. So there is a change. I'm going to blend a little bit more right up here. There's a change. I want to unify the strokes. Yeah, I think that's okay. In how I apply the paint. All right, I think also now, I'm going to go back to that technique of immersing color, because I feel like this color right here, it's not necessarily ecru. I want to play with it. I want to explore it. I want to study it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply ecru. So first of all, if I don't think you can see it, but yeah, it's too light. So value, it's very important. How do I darken that ecru? I'm going to bring some more chromatic black and see if that would do the trick. it's very blue. It's very blue. So if I add chromatic black to the ecru, it becomes very blue. So it's still much darker. So I'm going to bring some raw umber because it's a little bit warmer. Okay, I'm getting closer. I think that's good. So if I want to make it warmer, maybe some yellow ochre, and I got it. So I don't know if you can see it, but I did a few, let me see, it's gonna be hard, right? Yeah, I did a few color testing, there's like 3. And I realized that the last one, I think this one's right here, are better. I would have never done this color if I would not have immersed the color and really study it. So I know that I need to bring some raw umber and I need to bring some yellow ochre, which is sort of like a version of the color of the rest of the cabins, which makes sense. That's gonna help me integrate. Okay, so a little bit more. And then there's a double pane. So I can see some darker areas. I think that's gonna be really important. So I'm just gonna use raw umber. And do this darker. And then just bring some lighter notes. So I'm doing a little bit more detail here. I love the different layers on the window, the different values, a great study of blending and creating different values. Yeah, I think that's okay. All right, so I'm just gonna continue with second notes and I just give myself some time. So I still have time and I'm gonna apply some lighter notes where I see them right here. Also on this section right here. So I need to redefine this area. This feels almost like painting a building. Yeah, there you go. I think that's okay. And there's something here that feels also lighter. I'm gonna try to bring a lighter note. So I'm just playing with values right now. Trying to diversify the values that I've got. And playing with the shapes also. I think that's good. And this is much darker. I need to bring the edge. This edge is very important. I'm gonna bring this edge and then I'm gonna bring a lighter note underneath. There you go. I'm not trying to be perfect at all. I'm just doing my best. I need to blend this area. So let me just get this hairy guy that I call. And just bring the shadows a little closer. I think that's nice. There's the handle right here. There's a little bit of a crevice or indentation. So I'm gonna bring it. Yeah, I think that's okay. So since I have time to work on this and I see so much progress with so little um, change, I'm going to continue just building mostly this distinction between lighter and darker areas. There's a lighter note here, so I'm going to bring a medium brush and then just bring this light right up here. So just working on second notes, widening the spectrum of values within the same hue. So I'm not changing the hue, meaning like I'm not changing the color. This is a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna bring some lighter note. And this is much rounder. So I'm gonna bring like, now I'm gonna make a change in the drawing because this goes in a lot more, this shape. So I'm shaving. So notice that, and this is much more angled. So the drawing component never stops. This is much more angled. I'm totally redrawing this area. This is something that wasn't like this. So I just wanted to, yeah, I wanted to change it, right? Yeah, I think I'm doing the right thing. And now that I redrew the area, I'm just gonna blend the old line. Okay, I think that's good. This is much darker. So I'm gonna stipple, I don't know, stippling this darker area right here. It's a lot darker, so I need to make it darker. So thinking of like troubleshooting stuff, what happens if you cannot make it darker because you have something lighter underneath? You have two choices. You can put more paint and then with much gentler brushstroke, or you can just wipe off the entire thing in that area and then really start with a darker note. And this is a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna make some lighter note right up here, if I can make it stick. It's easier to make things lighter than it is to make it to make them darker. Isn't that interesting? And this is definitely much lighter. So I'm seeing so many differences here. So, and it has a little bit of blue. So I think I'm just gonna start bringing almost like a third note. So we never get to third notes. And what's a third note? A third note is a variation in temperature of the hue that we've been working on. So if this was ecru and I see a little bit of a cooler note, I bring some blue. And I think that works. It doesn't change the hue that much. It changes the temperature of the hue. So I don't know if that's easy to understand. Hue is color. So the hue is the, if I'm using yellow painting a banana, so the hue is yellow. The temperature of the hue is much more of a rusty yellow, like warm golden yellow, or sort of like a yellow that becomes a little bit like avocado, or going towards avocado. So we have two directions on the same yellow, warmer and lighter. So a third note would be to play with the temperature, of the hue of the color. All right, I'm going to make the railing.
Julio, would you say that second notes you focus more on the value, but in third notes it's more of temperature?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm just gonna add another fold. I think that's okay. I think that's okay. Actually, I am going to darken this a tad more. So, I mean, it just takes such a long time for my eyes to actually decipher the combination of values and shapes. I'm seeing things now, an hour and 26 minutes in. So I'm always, again, it's a humbling experience. I wasn't seeing all these things. This is much darker, so I'm just gonna try to darken this a little bit more. See if I can. It's a little bit darker. Again, it's harder to darken when you have lighter tones underneath. I think that's okay. Yeah, much more well integrated, I believe. And at the same time, I need to bring some lighter tones. So this kind of like game will go on for a while, but I just put a time limit on it. And my time limit is in 3 minutes. And this one has a much lighter version right here. Okay, so all right, I need to make this transition. So I'm cleaning the brush and make it a little bit more faded. It's too abrupt. And maybe, I don't know if I'm just gonna squeeze in those, in those 2 minutes, I'm gonna squeeze in a little bit of the values on the back seat that we talked about. I'm using the 0 size brush to bring the line, because I feel like that's gonna create the illusion of light going through the window. And then what else? So that's that. I think the top is a little bit darker. I should do this. I don't know if I have time, but just gonna make time. Let me just use this tone. It's a little bit darker, so more chromatic black. And it's warmer. What can I'm just gonna bring some, is this crazy? I'm gonna bring some burnt sienna. No, I'm not crazy. Yeah, I think that's good. So when I applied the tone, it was too blue. It just felt like too blue. and I needed to warm it up. So I brought in a little bit of burnt sienna, and which is a new color, but I think for this piece of plastic, it just creates a warmer temperature, and it totally works. So again, chromatic black, burnt sienna, a little bit of ecru. Yep. It makes sense. It's a different piece of the plane, so maybe this is a different color. And I'm gonna cut in this area. This is darker on top. I think that's good. And then it just fades into this darker area. So let me see if I can just build some darkness right here. And then to blend it, I'm not super happy about this, actually. I'm not super happy about this, but that's okay. This needs to be a little bit lighter, and then making it lighter when it's darker, it's a pain in the butt. But I'm just adding some ecru, and I think that's not too bad. I also noticed that the edges are pretty blurry here because everything's concentrated and focused on the window. So I feel like I want to go around the edge and make this much more blurry. I don't want this focal point to also take too much protagonism. I think that's a good idea. I think that was a good idea, I think. I need to shape so the drawing component never stops. I need to make this a little bit darker. And so many things to take care of. I think the more you work on the piece, the more you realize, and that's wonderful. What else needs to get done? And I just faded this area just because it just gives the illusion of the darkness really engulfing both shapes. And that's perfect. I think that was my strategy and it worked. And I just, hopefully this would serve as an example of how important it is to come up with some sort of like strategy and time yourself, because otherwise you could really fall into this black hole of working on a detail and it just never ends. So I'm going to continue working on this on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday probably. So I think this stage is pretty solid. I'm not going to overwork it right now because I want to spend the 30 minutes working on the landscape a little bit. And I think that works on my painting just because I have a small window. But some of the images that we put on the folder, the window is pretty big, and then the landscape is the most predominant aspect. So maybe you've been working on that already for the past hour, and that would make sense. So don't feel like you have to stick to the same strategy just because I'm doing this. Every image will require a different strategy. But anyhow, so here we go. What am I doing? I am going to work on first notes. Remember, that was the other lane of this piece, first notes. So first thing that I'm going to do is immerse a color. I'm just going to do the periwinkle and the white. Oh, okay. The bottom maybe, but I have some cerulean blue. So I think the top will be a little bit more cerulean blue. And I have to be careful because cerulean blue is a really strong color. Whoa, no. All right. So cerulean blue is too strong. So I am going to find my ecru. Here we go. I need to tone down that cerulean blue. And I need more ecru. Here we go. Some ecru here. No, I need more white. I'm making a mess right now. This is totally messy. This is way too yellow. All right, I'm gonna start from scratch. It's too pigmented. I need to make it more pastel. So this is what's interesting, and the opportunity during first notes is to really study the color. No, it's not happening. And you know why? Because it needs a little bit of red actually to tone down the blue and the green. Yep. Okay, here we go. Okay, all these little samples just to get the right or the blue that I want to use, that I feel comfortable using. So that's why first notes are so great. I think that's good. All right, I'm jumping in with the blues. Okay, some oil. I got the color, but it was much more challenging to do this blue than doing the blue, the cabin color. Much more challenging. So interesting, so interesting. And then I'm closing the gap. It's so hard to see actually because of the camera picking up the black. Okay. And then I'm just going to continue with a much lighter version against the horizon. And the horizon, I actually see the horizon now. I don't know what I was thinking before, but it's a little bit higher. It's just amazing. Again, this humbling experience that you think you're seeing everything. But you're not. And I don't want to make it too detailed. I'll bring the continuation before on both sides of the wing of the plane. And the concept of continuation is very important because if you want to show empty space behind us, an object, you better make sure that both sides of the object have the same value and the same hue and the same temperature. So it creates the illusion of space just behind the object. Because if one side of the object has one value, one hue, one temperature, and the other side of the object has a different one, the space will become shapes. Okay, I'm gonna paint the wing. I think I'm gonna do one detail at a time. And it's pretty, there's a little bit of gray, but not too much. So I'm just gonna bring that tone. Some oil, because without oil or medium, when I say oil, I say something to support your mixture. You won't get the fluidity that you need. And then some white. Okay, it's hard to see. Oh, here, I'm just blocking that. black. So just working on the upper area. Oh, okay, all these like tricks. Cameras are dumb. A little bit more, that's fine. Yay. Okay, so and time-wise, yeah, we still have like a good 20 minutes or even more. So okay. So I just can afford the luxury of making pauses, analyzing. But yeah, mostly what I'm doing is closing the gaps between the window and the landscape. Any areas that may feel there's an empty space. Oops. Because that's going to give also a sense of being a cutout. An actual window. I think it looks good. So I will continue. Actually, I'm gonna just step out for 1 second because I need a rag. And I saved an old sheet. Okay, that's good. So I'm using a paper towel. I don't know where I have my rags, and I have an entire bed sheet that it's so old. It ripped. And the paper towel, it just gives me, I don't know what the name of this thing is, but when I rub the brush against the paper towel, it just gets this styrofoam feeling. It doesn't feel right. Whoops.
Julio, do you know that like what is outside the window where the plane is?
I'm sorry?
Do you know the landscape that you're looking at?
I don't. I need to go because I just checked that on Instagram. So I need to find out. It looks very interesting, but I have no idea.
Yeah. Let me see. Maybe I mean, who knows? It's like a needle in a
Okay,
haystack.
yeah, because the image is on the folder.
Images on the folder, and then through Instagram, you just did hashtag airplane window.
April, yes, and that's one of was one of the most watched or whatever comes up on top. Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
That would be great, Jen.
Let me see if I can find it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do the check on the gray of the river. All right, not too bad. Some of the color that I use of the cabin and gray. Oh, I need to get this book. Someone was talking about this book. The title is The Truth is Always Gray, and it's a book that talks about the importance of gray color in art history. And I just love everything about that. The Truth is Always Gray. What a great title, man. Maybe that could be a t-shirt. I don't know.
Totally.
The Truth is Always Gray. Such a beautiful, poetic title. Anyhow, and the book is actually online. It's free. It's on PDF or something. It's one of those like thesis books. Okay, so I'm just doing, yes, what's the city?
Bummer. It just says somewhere in the air. And it's the person says, I miss sitting by one of these small windows for hours. Bummer.
Any comments? Oh, I'm
Let's
gonna reach
see.
out. Maybe you want to reach out.
Her name is Chloe Chung. She's a digital creator, and she says, just another New Yorker. And let me see if I can find.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a comment.
Here we go.
When was this taken? Does it say? I mean, yeah, it says.
It doesn't say when it was taken, but it was posted May 1st.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She's from Japan, so okay,
Yeah, this looks like I don't know. There's this huge building canopy or something close to the river. It doesn't feel. I don't know. There's like it looks like not a pyramid, but
right. I see that.
yeah. Anyhow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, bummer. And I looked through her comments, and it doesn't say.
Doesn't say. Okay.
Mm-mm. And none of her hashtags reveal it either.
Right. Oh, other images maybe in her account. Maybe after.
Yeah, none of the.
Okay. All right.
It's my beige mood. Hashtag my beige mood. I don't know.
It's okay.
It doesn't look like New York, and it doesn't really look like Japan either.
Right.
So
yeah.
I don't know, but I want to start following this person. She's got beautiful photographs.
Well, the way she composed this image, obviously, she must have like great taste.
Oh my gosh.
For her taste level.
I'm gonna start following her. She's got 30,000 followers. So
how many?
Go 30,000.
What?
Yes, and she is followed by the Huxton Hotel and Jean Stouffer Design, who is one of the most incredible kitchen designers of our lifetime.
Wow.
Or like designers. Okay, so I'm gonna follow her. I'll be 30,001. And it looks like she travels a lot. Seoul, Europe, Mexico City.
Maybe it is South Korea.
Okay, maybe one of her. Hold on, I might be able to track it down. Oh my gosh, Julio, you're going to love.
Ooh, that's too dark. So I'm trying to get some of the color right there. And I mix some cerulean, some chromatic black, because there's definitely like an ocean. And I think I got the color. Again, just like doing first notes work on this area, because I think that one I have time. Some oil. And I do a combination of like stippling in certain areas to get the texture, but also blocking, because I didn't have that much work done in this area. So removing some of the browns towards the end of the landscape. And I'm stippling right now, like little tiny brush strokes in order to get this texture of the city from above. Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, let me see if I can cover this. I don't know if I can cover this, but all right, let me just do this. Let me extend this arm. No. No, because it's video, so it doesn't let me. Maybe this is a little bit better. Yeah, so here we go. The wing, the sky, and the ocean, and I'm trying to do some stippling to get this idea of texture, because this is like urban area sprawl. And then there's the river, and I need to continue the river. So that's what I'm doing right now. And then I'm gonna step back. I just feel, oh, that's so a bummer. I'll just take a picture, a close up, and then upload it when we are on the break. But where is my gray for the, okay, here it is. For the river, for the body of water. It's right here. So it's a little bit, yeah, here we go. So this is why it's so important to start creating different values. I mean, different tones on the palette, because it's never going to be straight up raw material. It's always going to be variations. And so, yeah, there's some notes right here. So I'm just going to bring those elements. Yeah, I think that's okay. I'm just, I'm happy. I'm going to bring the zero brush. And I feel like now, these last few minutes, I can concentrate on the texture through the window. So no, I'm not using any medium because I want the paint to actually, block. So especially I'm doing this closer to the bottom of the window because that's where there's a little bit more definition. I want to get this idea of this being a sprawl that extends towards the horizon. So in order to create that sense of perspective, I need to work on the amount of detail. And what I'm doing is creating more of a build, like a mini grid. Yes, a mini grid, a grainier application at the bottom of the window, because that's supposed to be like closer. And I'm gonna do this more like a faded. Actually, I'm just gonna do both at the same time. Where is the hairy guy here? I don't know where it went. Okay, so I need another hairy guy because this has black. Okay, this one. Let's see. Wow, this was interesting. And so again, just an old brush, super clean, perpendicular. And then what I'll do is I'll blend and fade the strokes on the sky. I want this to be super smooth and soft and without any streaks or hatched strokes. So very, very, very flat. Totally. And then I'm going to do some blending towards the end of the sprawl. That's it. Not too much. Because if I do too much, I think that's good. Let me see. I'm going to remove the phone. Sorry, it's going to be a little dizzying. But, oh, what happened? So this is what I'm working on. It's just a total mess right now. It's really tiny. But I smooth out the top, the sky. That's the wing of the plane. And I haven't worked in the middle, but the bottom of the window has more of like really pointillistic stippling. And I just tried to create also a little bit of border, an even border along the river. So I'm just gonna continue working. We have time in the middle, so I need to make it more like a grid, and I think that's gonna be really successful. But for now, yeah, I'm just glad that. Okay, here we go. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's makes it a very interesting image, if you ask me. And so I'm gonna continue with my zero brush, and there's some lighter, almost like white buildings right here. And I'm gonna apply this in a pointillistic way. This reminds me a little bit like painting the bougainvillea, you know, all the texture and the leaves, or the colorful leaves. It was just like weaving. And especially cutting, because drawing wise, I need to cut in the frame of the window. I think that's also very important. Yeah, it's coming together. It's coming together. Total pointillism right here. Total pointillism. Oh, yeah, nice. And actually, I'm having a lot of fun with this mini painting inside of the painting. I love paintings inside of paintings. And this feels like a painting inside of the painting. Speaking of painting, we were just checking the art news this week. We try to quench our thirst for news by pivoting to anything that's art related, because the rest of the world's going down. Anyhow, so we were just mentioning this this past few days. Our blue boy in the Huntington Gardens, the most iconic. I mean, it's just, I think LA, it's like sometimes it drives me nuts because we've got one of the most iconic paintings in the world, you know, and we have it in our right here, the blue boy, the Gainsborough blue boy. Any other city would, you know, that would be essentially everywhere, postcards and stuff, I guess. Maybe because it's a private institution, perhaps, who knows. Anyhow, the blue boy is leaving for the first time in 100 years, and it's going back to London in February 2022. It was in the news. The LA Times wrote an article about how this is a major, major event because this painting hasn't traveled anywhere ever since it was purchased by Mr. Huntington, whatever his name was. Um, and it was a big deal. There was so many protests in the UK when this happened. There were thousands of people waving goodbye to the painting before it just boarded on a ship, and then I don't know what harbor it arrived at, but then it traveled by train from the East Coast to the West Coast. So it's going to be shown in the National Gallery, yes, right, yeah, in London. And the Blue Boy has been recently restored. So a lot of people involved in the restoration were against loaning this painting because they said it's going to have some structural damage, and everyone's freaking out. But someone at the board said no. They went against all the opinions of the restorers, and they are going to send it there. On that note, we can't wait to see your work. Let's take a break. We reconvene at 1:10 or whatever your time zone is. 10 minutes. We're going to stop the recording now. We're not going to record the rest of the session. Number one, stretch. Number two, drink, use the restroom, eat something. We'll see you at 1:10 and upload the images on the folder so we can kind of like chat or at least provide feedback and then see what we've done. All right, see you at 1:10.